pass it on down to Commissioner Shad.
I too attended the Bay County League of Cities dinner last night and listened to what the man from the DOT had to say. While it was mostly good news, there's one question mark that's cloudy in there that we need to find an answer to. But one thing, I would like to recognize the work that two of our commissioners have done working with the TPO, and that's Rodney Friend and Joe Ashford. They've spent an awful lot of time in the last couple of years working with the TPO, and the TPO works with the Department of Transportation when we get into some of these issues. So they have been very active in working with them, and I personally appreciate what you all have done, and I know the people in the community, if they knew more about what was going on, would do the same thing. On a more personal note, for 4 weeks I've been laid up with the flu. Please, if you get the flu, do not hesitate to go to the doctor. Believe me, this stuff that's going around now is mean. And it attacks all ages too, from the youngsters up to the elderly and to those that are in their 30s and 40s. And the doctor that I go to told me one of the reasons it's hitting so hard this year is they misjudged the strain that would be needed when you got the flu shot. They worked those up a year in advance. So they're working right now on next year's flu shots and what they should contain. But they missed it this year. So there's a lot of people suffering from the flu. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Ashbrook?
Well, thank you, Commissioner Shad. I appreciate those comments. I, too, attended the opening of ACE, and speaking from a personal standpoint, it's nice to not have to go on down to 23rd Street for, 6 brass number 6 screws and have to make that trip. Problem is when you go into one of those stores, you usually come out with more than what you intended to start with. So congratulations to Stephen Smith and Bill Head for coming here to Lynn Haven. We're glad to see them. Also was in attendance at the groundbreaking of the Hope Cancer Clinic. About a week or so ago, Dr. Merched is making a substantial investment in Lynn Haven by adding what amounts to about double the square footage of his clinic down there, and it's nice to have a medical facility like that here in our hometown. Also attended a kind of a fun event, the bed race, because the Lynn Haven Fire Department put together a pretty neat bed with siren and lights and everything else. It was kind of a fun time down there to watch them. I think they should have probably filed a protest, but we left it at that. They were run into on their first heat by the other team. And then finally there was, Marie had a great Saturday baseball opening event. That's always kind of one of the seminal moments in Lynn Haven when you kick off spring, is to have 600 or 700 people out there, families of all sizes and shapes. But it's always a fun day, and that was a very, very nice event, Marie, that you and your staff put together. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnes?
Just also wanted to say great job for the opening day of baseball. It was fantastic. I agree with Commissioner Ashbrook. It was good to see all of the various families out there just enjoying that day, and so I enjoyed the day being with them. Also attended the Ace Hardware grand opening. I'm glad to see that come to Lynn Haven. The Hope Cancer ground opening, that's going to be a tremendous asset to this community. And also attended the League of Cities dinner last night as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mayor. Just so we don't repeat, attended some of the same events, and it is really good. We always have a really good turnout. Commissioner Shad, thanks for the kind words as well, but we always seem to have a really good turnout from your representatives at some of these ribbon cuttings and grand openings and all these special events. So that's always really good for me to see when we go to those things, and I always like seeing the Bay County Chamber come to Lynn Haven, so that's great. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. At this time, we have the City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple items and then a couple items of recognition. One, I was honored to represent Lynn Haven along with the other city managers at the Panama City Garden Club, where we talk about each city and their paint up, clean up, fix up. Among other things, we talked about our amnesty and the 80 trees that were just planted on Florida Avenue. Our infrastructure projects were aesthetically piping ditches, filling in ditches, eliminating safety hazards, et cetera, et cetera. So I was proud of the presentation we were able to give and report on the progress in Lynn Haven, and I think that went well. Wanted to also recognize briefly our first responders. Commissioner Ashbrook mentioned the fire department represented us well. That bed is really something to see. You can see some of the pictures on Facebook. But again, I do think they placed higher than what was there, but we'll just leave it at that. And they have vowed to come back stronger next year and take home the first prize. But they did just an excellent job. And then also the police department was at Sonny's this past Saturday for the Tip a Cop events for Special Olympics, and that was a successful event. And I just can't say enough. They work long hours, stay away from their families, keeping us all safe, but the community outreach, especially of late, the last year or two, has just been exceptional. So hats off to them. With that, I've got an Employee of the Month and then another special recognition. First, if Brent Dillard could come forward. I think Brent has his family here. Brent, we have probably a love-hate relationship. I love him. I don't know how much he loves me back, but he does an exceptional job. He's been with us about 3 years. He's the coordinator for all your recreational activities. So, you know, good-looking guy. He's the face of the outfit out there at Leisure Service as far as the sports program. So a lot of our citizens come in contact with Brent. And while the kids most times are pretty easy to manage, sometimes the adults require a little more attention, but he has done an excellent job. Every year since I've been here, and we've been here about the same amount of time, going on 3 years, it's progressively getting better. And the biggest challenge I have with Brent is keeping the reins on him. I'm like, Brent, you're short-staffed. Brent, you got some turnover here. Let's go through a year where you have the same staff. And he's, no, sir, I want to bring in some adult softball. No, I want flag football. And it's just, all right, Brent, come on now. We can't hire 10 more people, maybe try for 1 or 2, but does an exceptional job. I get a lot of compliments from him. He's got a hard job to do, and he has certainly earned the Employee of the Month. So appreciate you. Thank you. And Ryan Campbell, there he is. Ryan Campbell, as he's walking up, is an Eagle Scout who created 5 lounge chairs over there at Porter Park. You can see them as you come down the bridge. We already had a few, but we're always in need of some more, and great design. They look great. He's a Boy Scout and has been since 2002 in Troop 300. His brother and father have been in the Scouts, but most of all, they are all Eagle Scouts, and at age 17, Ryan has accomplished a lot, along with the fact that he's also the band captain at Bay High School. So he took it upon himself to design, build, and those 5 chairs out there are all because of him. We appreciate those efforts. Thank you very much. Certificate of appreciation signed by the mayor. So thanks so much, Ryan. And I believe Chief Reamer has an additional recognition, and I am done.
If I could get Annabelle Janke to come up and join me, please. Annabelle is a 7th grader at Bay Haven, and in her civics class, she had a project that was community service oriented. So she chose to help our Lynn Haven Animal Shelter, and by her artist rendition of 2 of the animals that we had at the shelter, they were able to find forever homes. They have been adopted. So we would like to present her with this certificate in recognition of your community service project resulting in the adoption of 2 animals from the Lynn Haven Animal Shelter. The Lynn Haven Police Department would like to express a heartfelt thank you.
Those were wonderful. Thank you, Annabelle. That's a great accomplishment. Those are lovely renderings of the pets. And I just wanted to go back to Ryan for a moment because if it's my understanding, when you do the project, is that your final step for the Eagle Scout, Ryan? To me, the Eagle Scouts represent everything that's fine in the United States, and so I just it's a military-like accomplishment, really. And if you wouldn't mind, I would just love to stand and honor Ryan for completing the Eagle Scout. And just one more word for Annabelle. I don't think there's anything kinder that we can do than taking care of those creatures on this earth that can't care for themselves. So you are to be commended, Annabelle. Thank you so much. Moving on now to item number 6, the city attorney's report.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Our consent agenda just has 2 items today, so I'll go ahead and read both of those, and then if anyone has questions from the board or the public, we'll allow that. Item number 7, the minutes from the February 28th regular meeting approval, and item number 8 is approval of a task order in the amount of $84,500 to Panhandle Engineering for the wastewater system video inspection and condition assessment. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any questions or concerns from the board for staff? And there appear to be none. Are there any questions from the public regarding the consent order or the minutes? And there appear to be none. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so the consent agenda stands approved. Moving on to new business, item number 9 is a resolution 2017-03677 by the City of Lynn Haven opposing House Bill 17 and Senate Bill 1158, which are currently under discussion with the Florida Legislature. Mr. Schubert, if you would please read the resolution.
A resolution of the City of Lynn Haven urging all members of the Florida Legislature to oppose HB 17 and SB 1158, which preempts local business regulations, prohibits local government from imposing or adopting any new regulations on businesses unless expressly authorized by the legislature, directing the city manager to transmit a certified copy of this resolution to the Northwest Florida League of Cities, the Bay County Legislative Delegation, and any other interested parties, providing for an immediate effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion for acceptance of the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any questions regarding the resolution? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, at this time, Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so item number 9 stands approved. Moving to item number 10, the discussion and possible action regarding approval of Development Order DO 17-2 and Certificate of Concurrency for McDonald's additional parking and training room, and this is a judicial hearing, so our city attorney will be swearing in our city planner, Amanda Richard.
Yes, ma'am. Items number 10 and 11 are quasi-judicial hearings in the City of Lynn Haven. If anybody plans on providing any testimony before the commission, please go ahead and stand and raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. And if any commissioners had any ex parte communications regarding either items number 10 or 11, please go ahead and disclose this on the record.
I have none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
And I've had none.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is a development order application, and the project is McDonald's parking lot and training room. The applicant is David Costa Enterprises, Inc., and the agent is here tonight, Jason Toole, the engineer for the project. The location is 1710 South Highway 77. The existing land use is commercial, and the size of the vacant parcel is 0.77 acres approximately. What's being proposed is a 3,500 square foot building which will be used as a training facility, and parking and stormwater facilities to accommodate that building, and also additional parking actually for the McDonald's that's there. This shows the location of the vacant parcel. It is immediately south of the existing McDonald's, and I think you probably all realised that McDonald's was recently refurbished and has become very popular. So they really needed additional parking, and also decided to put a training facility there, an office. on the same site. This is the aerial of the proposed location, and this is the site plan. Where you see the red star up there on the site plan is where the stormwater, the new stormwater pond, will be located, which will accommodate the stormwater for the increased impervious surface that is going to go on that site. I wanted to bring to your attention that this did go before the Planning Commission last week, but the development order application, they recommended denial because there was no engineer present to answer engineering specific questions. One of the board members on the planning board is an engineer, and he had some specific engineering questions which I wasn't able to answer, and so therefore he didn't want to make a motion to approve, and the other board members kind of went along with it. I wanted to let you know that I did call Michael Cross, that particular board member, this morning, and let him know. He knew that it was coming tonight, but I called him to remind him that it was coming before you tonight, and there would be engineers here, so if he wanted to come along and ask those questions this evening, he could do that. And he said that he may come, but I don't see him here. We do have the engineer representing the developer here tonight, and we also have our city engineer, well, the engineer who reviewed the project for the city. So if anybody has any specific engineering questions, there are engineers here tonight to answer. The one question that Board Member Cross had was concerning the overflow to the stormwater pond. He wanted to know if that stormwater pond became full, where would the water drain out to? And he was told that there were ditches to the west and the east, deep ditches that were dug, but then he had further questions which I wasn't qualified to answer.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone from the board have comments or questions regarding Ms. Richards' report?
That property is pretty low. Are there going to be much fill in it to bring it up?
There aren't any wetlands on there, but it is pretty low. But I think I will have one of the engineers come up. I don't know which one wants to come up. Would you like to come up, Jason? So this is Jason Toole, and he's the engineer for the developer.
Welcome, Jason, and thank you for coming.
Jason Toole, CPH Engineers. Our office is 1031 West 23rd Street in Panama City. Yes, there will be fill brought in to raise the site. The existing elevations on that site now are around 14 or 15. We're going to be raising it up to about 18, so it's going to be about 2 to 3 foot of fill that's going to go in that site.
And then from the parking part of it, it will drain into the holding?
Correct. There, yeah, if you see like you said, where the star is on the plan, there'll be a pond there. And so we'll collect it. We'll have a couple of inlets within the paved parking lot area that'll collect the stormwater, and it'll drain it to a pond behind the building. And once that pond has the water quality treatment that it needs to be, it'll then release it to the ditch to the west.
How is the water going to get from that site beyond the railroad tracks? Because you got that embankment.
We're cutting in our site close to where the building is. We're actually cutting in a small swell, and that's where the water will discharge, and then it'll just sheet flow. It'll just overland flow into that ditch and continue going where it does now. So.
Does that ditch eventually end up in 17th Street, in what we call our famous 17th Street ditch?
I believe so. I know it continues to flow north.
Which we're in the process of piping.
Right, we don't do anything. It already goes there now, and so
right.
We're going to meet pre-post.
Okay.
As far as we'll be discharging the same amount or less water into that same ditch. So.
Okay. So once the pond does fill, it will, like as you say, sheet into that ditch,
Correct.
Work its way to our existing ditch.
Correct. And honestly, the pond doesn't actually fill in over top. We actually have a discharge structure that will control how much water discharges.
Like a weir box or something?
Correct, like a weir box.
Okay.
Right, and even for the 100-year storm event, the pond, we've done that, and the pond holds it as well. So it doesn't overtop even for the 100-year event. So.
Are there other questions from the board?
Just so you know, one other thing, since it was a stormwater question, we have also permitted through the Water Management District, Northwest Florida, and also through DOT for driveway and drainage as well. We have those permits already.
Yeah, yes, Mayor. I would just ask, Amanda, do you think that that covers the concerns of the planning board that they had that night, or do we need any other additional information?
I think that covers it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I just wanted to make sure it was on the record for them.
I actually, yes, I think actually the questions are probably more in depth than we're going to be asked that evening.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
You had mentioned that our engineer had been in.
Yeah, we have Chris Short here from Dewberry who reviewed the plans and had, in the process of review, had comments and had sent them back to the developer's engineer until they were satisfied. So he is here if you had any questions from him. Chris Short.
I would just address the question to him, I guess, if he wants to come up, that to be certain that you're satisfied that all the criteria that the planning board was questioning have been met.
Yes, sir. Like Mr. Toole mentioned, the pond is designed to maintain the existing flows or the flow patterns to the ditch, and the pond will actually hold back the post-development discharge, so it's equal to or less than the stormwater currently going there, and then it just continues on the existing, not changing the current flow pattern. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Just a motion, there's no reading.
Is there a motion for this action?
I'll move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Before we call for a vote, are there any concerns or questions from the public on this matter? There appear to be none. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so it is approved. And then moving to item number 11, which is also part of this hearing, the discussion and possible action regarding approval of development order DO 17-5 and certificate of concurrency for SunTrust ATM drive-through kiosk. We don't need to do another swearing in.
No, ma'am, we
Okay,
just
we've
took
covered
care of both of them.
Thank you very much. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Richard.
This is a development order amendment application. The project is SunTrust ATM drive-through kiosk. The applicant is David Henry Market Shops, and the agent is Chris Forehand from Panhandle Engineering, and Chris is here this evening. We also have Jeff Peterman here, and I think Jeff may be answering questions on this tonight. The location is 2260 South Highway 77. The existing land use is mixed use. The size is, the parent parcel size, not the size of the project, but the parent parcel where it will be located, if you approve it, is 6.5 acres. And what's being proposed is a ATM drive-through kiosk by SunTrust Bank. This map is the land use map, which shows the current location, and this is it's the commercial subdivision where Publix is located, Publix Innovations, Sonny's Barbecue, and Dunkin' Donuts. This is the aerial, and you can see on the right-hand side there along Highway 77, there is working north, there's Innovations, and then Sonny's, and then Dunkin' Donuts. That vacant parcel is part of a larger commercial subdivision that did come before you a few years ago for a development order approval, and so that's why this is an amendment to the original development order. Stormwater for the entire site has already been taken care of. And what's being asked for here is just a little drive-through ATM located behind Innovations Bank. You had all these in your, so far you had all of these in your packets, but you did not have this one, I don't think, in your packets. And this just shows you, this is kind of the little site plan that shows you what it will look like. And on the left-hand side there is kind of the in and out from behind Innovations. So you would have the road that comes off 77 to the left of Innovations, and if you wanted to get to the ATM, you would just go straight across that little bypass road that's behind there at the moment. And again, we do have the submitting engineers here, and we have the reviewing engineers, so if you have any questions of the engineers, they're here to answer those.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval of this item?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion for the engineers or for Ms. Richard?
It just seems like a large parent parcel for such a small facility.
Well, we're hoping that other things will go on there. I mean, there have been some proposals in the past for, strip malls, or there was at one time, I think there was going to be a fitness centre that was interested in locating there. We are hoping that something will locate there, but as yet, nobody's brought anything to us.
So he's just carving out this small piece for the bank for just an ATM.
Yeah, it's gonna use up. Can you see? It's gonna clip the edge of some parking. Can you see those fishbone, look like fish spines, on the right-hand side of those 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of rows of parking? It's going to be taking out a parking space or two along the edges there.
And we recently received a letter telling us that our bank is closing on 7th Street, the SunTrust Bank.
Really?
So maybe this is a sort of a little replacement to give us some convenience in Lynn Haven. So any other comments or questions from the board? Anyone from the public have a comment or question? Yes, Mr. Walker.
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. I want to thank you for meeting with me that one day and going through a lot of information, positive. First noticing this, it came of a concern, and I went to SunTrust Bank to find out. They're closing in Lynn Haven, and now they're going to open an ATM. And SunTrust doesn't know anything about this, so I'm just wondering. The question came up, is this location going to be different than the ATM they have? They have a drive-in and everything there already. And we were wondering with SunTrust what was up. They didn't know. So what comes of this is a new location down to where Mr. Salina had solicited that large area you're talking about. And it seemed very interesting. So it doesn't go with what paperwork comes out of SunTrust and what's up there. Is this going to be an Innovations Bank ATM?
I received, just because I personally bank with SunTrust, but I received a letter from them about 2 weeks ago saying that they're completely closing. You got the same thing? And so that's my understanding, is that this bank is completely closing. So I don't know if anyone else has more information.
Now we got an ATM there. But it did clear up something with SunTrust. They're under the impression it's going to be a new location rather than the location that's in Lynn Haven. So that probably answers the question, but I was wondering if you guys knew if it's going to be SunTrust, the same group.
That's my understanding. I don't know if anyone else has a different understanding.
Okay, I have to report back to SunTrust also on this, but it seems to be a new location, an ATM in a large area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question or concern about this item before we vote? Okay, thank you. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll then?
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend? Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. So item number 11 stands approved. That brings us to our last item of today's agenda, which is public commentary. At this time, if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak, you're welcome to approach the podium. Please state your name and address. Mr. DeFell? Sure. Come on up.
Excuse me. I'm Virgil DeFell, 1009 Colorado Avenue, Lynn Haven, Florida. 2 years ago, I planned way in advance for an event at Kaleidoscope Theater. And it was a forum which had been conducted for years past by Mr. Peter Michael Bardock. And at times, I can remember when this space was a church and we met here, or partial of this space. I can remember now have been here in Lynn Haven 26 years, coming up in a few days. And I had this idea that the chambers might be a place to have a candidates night this election cycle. So I met with Mr. Schubert about 2 months ago, probably Mr. Schubert, or something close to that. And I talked with some of the candidates also, but I was informed that it would be perhaps not a good idea this election because it might be construed that unfair to that we have 2 incumbents and we have 4 other candidates seeking the 2 offices. So I like to plan ahead. So I'm thinking, Mayor, if I'm correct, this next, in 2018, I do not believe we have an election in Lynn Haven. Is that correct?
We won't have another one until 2019.
So it's 2 years away.
Correct.
Well, I'm thinking ahead and thinking that when I don't know about anybody else, but I have no idea who will be the incumbents 2 years from now. So I think if we plan and had just ongoing, whoever the candidates are, to use this space, it's ideal. It's first floor. Everybody knows where it is. Now, I did spend some time making an effort to secure other locations, local churches. Now, to be honest, I didn't choose to pursue Kaleidoscope this year. But, and in fact, sometimes in the past, we used to even have an event, which we might have. I have no idea of that. But there are times when it's appropriate to honor some of our retiring executive employees here in the county, or in the city, I should say. That might even happen. But this space, I think, should be available. Now, I was told that, of course, you, Mayor, and the commissioners, if you had voted for us to have an election forum, a candidates forum, I should say, then that could have happened. But I chose not to pursue that, but to plant the idea that this would be ongoing available for an appropriate location, for an appropriate event for our citizens here in Lynn Haven. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeFell. And I would also like to comment on your request because there are Florida statutes, about elected officials and about elections and fairness and soliciting votes, that kind of thing. But I totally agree with you that this is a public building, and that if there's an election going on, regardless of who's the incumbent and who is the person who is challenging, it would be possible to have a political forum here. I believe, without imposing on anyone, or being unfair to anyone. Basically, what I understand Florida statutes to say is if you're using a public building for political events, each candidate simply has to have equal access. In other words, if one candidate's allowed to speak in that venue, then the other should be as well. Years ago, for example, I ran for school board when I was very young, and I found that it was not allowed for candidates to go into a school to speak unless all candidates were allowed to do so. So a public building should be, I think, a venue for political events. I do understand why the city staff would be reluctant to be the ones who are coordinating or organizing those events, because the city manager basically answers to the city commission. And so, therefore, he would not want to show any any illusion of partiality to anyone. But I do believe if you had an outside organization such as League of Women Voters or some civic organization who wanted to come in here and organize it and be in charge of it, and make sure that there were no irregularities, that shouldn't be a problem. So I would certainly be for that being placed on the agenda and being decided in the near future, so that possibly if I don't know that it's too late for this election cycle, but if it is for the next one, I totally agree with you, because this is a taxpayer funded facility and should be open to the public. That's my thoughts. Anyone else have thoughts on that? I kind of got long-winded. I think the commission seems to have consensus with that, so that shouldn't be a problem, Mr. DeFell. Thank you for all that you do for your civic mindedness. Anyone else have an issue today to speak on to the commission? All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming out today. It's been a pleasure to see everyone, and this meeting is adjourned.